Hey guys, tonight we slide into the stone-cold silence of ancient Rome, into a world where marble floors echo with distant sandals, where oil lamps sputter against the shadows, and the emperor's bedroom never truly goes dark. You're inside the imperial palace of Domitian, ruler of the Roman world in the late 1st century CE. The air is heavy with incense and paranoia. A thin breeze pushes past the purple curtains. But sleep? Sleep never comes. The man in the vast bed, pillowed in purple, blanketed in gold, is not resting. His eyes are open, wide, staring into the rafters. His mind loops in spirals, replaying old betrayals, half-heard whispers, dreams that might have been prophecies. You shift beside him, no sudden moves, and he turns slightly, just to make sure you aren't holding a dagger. This is the sort of bedtime routine you're in for tonight. Domitian can't sleep. And not in the casual, I had too much wine with dinner kind of way. No, this is soul-level, spine-curdling, politically induced insomnia. The kind of sleeplessness that makes you replace all your mirrors because you're convinced the old ones showed you dying too clearly. The kind of fear that makes you banish servants just for coughing during your 3 a.m. pacing session. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The hallway outside Domitian's bedroom smells faintly of polished bronze and candlesoot. You walk it in silence. Every few feet, a bust of some long-dead general glares down at you like he knows what you're thinking. You're not supposed to be here, but neither is sleep. So the emperor paces, and you, his silent companion, bear witness. Domitian was never meant to be emperor, really. He wasn't the eldest. He wasn't the war hero. He wasn't the people's choice. In fact, in the early days, he wasn't even noticed. He grew up in the shadows of his father, Vespasian, gruff, competent, and his charismatic older brother, Titus, who could win over crowds just by smiling awkwardly. And yet here Domitian is, ruler of Rome, standing alone in the very palace he once wandered as a forgettable son. He stands there now, barefoot on cold marble, listening for daggers. The lamps hiss faintly. You blink, and he notices. Did you just blink suspiciously? He asks. You didn't. Probably. The emperor's sleeplessness isn't just a personality quirk. It's practically policy. His bedroom is lined with polished stone that reflects light too harshly for comfort. He keeps a dagger under the pillow, and sometimes a list of names people who have annoyed him recently. It's an ever-shifting roster. One senator made his pun he didn't like at dinner and ended up removed from history literally. Domitian ordered his name erased from all public inscriptions. You'd think that kind of power would bring peace. It doesn't. You'd imagine the leader of the world's most powerful empire would sleep soundly. Instead, he twitches at the sound of moths bumping into lampshades. You watch him drink a herbal brew wormwood and vinegar, supposedly good for warding off dreams. He winces. It tastes like regret. Historians still argue whether Domitian's fear of sleep stemmed from a single event. Some say an early assassination attempt that no record survives. Others say he simply read too much into portents. But what's certain is that this fear, this chronic insomnia, becomes the defining rhythm of his reign. Rome sleeps. Domitian DOESN single quotes T. And the consequences ripple outward. He starts scheduling meetings at night. All policies are drafted at 2 a.m. Senators grow pale and shaky. They pretend they've always been nocturnal. One poor diplomat from Gaul fainted mid-sentence and was quietly reassigned to the provinces. And still, the emperor walks. You follow. As he checks the locks on every chamber. He taps on walls like he's checking for hidden passages. He once had an entire wing rebuilt after he dreamed of a snake slithering through the floorboards. Just a dream, but dreams are no small thing to a man who believes they're coded warnings. And Domitian believes. Oh, does he believe? Some nights, he orders musicians to play softly just outside his room. Not for relaxation, no. For surveillance. If the tune falters, if the flutist hesitates, he assumes something has gone wrong. One time, a lute string snapped, and the player was never seen again. It's past midnight now, and the Emperor's footsteps echo through the long hall. He murmurs something about Jupiter and betrayal. You stay close. Even his own reflection seems to make him nervous. The polished bronze shields hung like wall decor are covered tonight, just in case they reflect something he doesn't want to see. This is a man waging war with sleep. A one-man rebellion against the vulnerability of dreams. The irony, of course, is that for all his paranoia and control, he's walking straight into the kind of ending all his nightmares have warned him about. But for now, he's still walking, still muttering, still wide awake, and so are you. You're still trailing him quiet as the shadows through another corridor lit only by wall sconces. The light wavers, like it's unsure whether to reveal or to hide. And honestly, so is Domitian. He mutters under his breath again something about vultures and portents. His sandals whisper against the mosaic floor. You don't know whether he's praying, cursing, or composing one of his more poetic death warrants. To understand why Domitian can't sleep, you have to go back to the cradle, or maybe even the womb. He was born in 51 CE, a middle child in an era when middle children didn't write history. They usually just disappeared into it. His father, Vespasian, was off campaigning. His brother Titus, beloved, loud, heroic, and Domitian? Small, pale, quiet, not the stuff of emperors. But even then, the shadows felt thicker around him. Rome was a place where gossip could kill faster than poison. Domitian learned this early. The family rose through the chaos of civil war, one emperor after another being assassinated, banished, or shoved off conveniently high places. It was a time when even the statues looked nervous. He was just a teenager when Rome handed power to his father, a nervous, watchful boy living in a city full of blades. He watched how people smiled with their teeth, but never with their eyes. He learned to nod without trusting. And sleep? Sleep was for people who didn't have older brothers charming their way through power structures like a golden retriever in a toga. One year, during the Saturnalia festival, a nobleman jokingly called young Domitian a ghost child. Not for his complexion, though that didn't help, but because, as the man put it, he's here, but no one remembers inviting him. Domitian laughed, but later that night, that same nobleman found his villa unexpectedly raided for tax irregularities. Coincidence? Historians still argue whether Domitian orchestrated such petty revenges in his youth, or whether the empire's natural corruption did the job for him. Still, the ghost child label stuck. It wasn't just his skin. It was how he moved. Always. Quiet. Always watching. He wasn't Rome's golden boy. He was the smudge on the marble. And yet, slowly, relentlessly, that smudge began to spread. When Vespasian died, Titus became emperor. And to everyone's relief, Titus was good at it, popular, effective, easy to paint on coins. But his reign was short. A fever took him within. 2 years. Or maybe poison did. Or maybe it was just bad luck and spoiled figs. Historians again argue. What no one argues is this. Domitian stepped in like a shadow sliding into the light. Suddenly, the quiet boy was emperor, and everyone held their breath. Even Domitian seemed unsure whether this was a promotion or a trap. He didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He didn't sleep. His father had ruled by competence, his brother by charisma, but Domitian? He ruled by caution. And a lot of lists, one of the first things he did was fortify the palace. Not just militarily, but spiritually, emotionally, acoustically. He installed thicker doors, more guards, soundproof chambers. The palace staff was reorganized, so he never saw the same servant 2 nights in a row. Fresh faces meant fewer conspiracies, supposedly. But if you thought that made him feel safer, think again. His nights grew longer, his silences deeper, his orders more erratic. You'd think that becoming the most powerful man in the world would quiet some of the old doubts. But for Domitian, the crown just confirmed his worst suspicions, that everyone else wanted it too. That's when the nightmares began. He dreamed of falling statues, of being eaten by his own reflection, of shadows with his brother's face laughing in the distance. He once ordered an entire fountain drained because the sound of running water reminded him of someone whispering his name in a dream. A marble fish sculpture was destroyed beheaded, technically for inappropriate splashing. The palace doctor prescribed sleep potions. They worked, kind of. But when Domitian slept, he woke up gasping, clutching his throat, convinced someone had just whispered the exact moment of his future assassination. He couldn't remember the words, just a cold certainty. And so, slowly, he abandoned sleep like an old, unreliable friend. You watch now as he passes a set of closed doors. He pauses, listens, frowns. They're empty, probably. But he makes a mark on the frame with his finger. A small X, barely visible. It will mean something to someone by morning. The sad part? He wasn't always like this. Some early records describe him as thoughtful. A writer, even. He wrote poetry, loved Greek culture, hosted philosophical debates. He once composed an entire essay about modesty. Imagine that Domitian, emperor of Rome, writing odes to humility. Historians still debate whether these works were sincere or carefully curated propaganda, like a good vibes only scroll for anxious rulers. But the truth is probably both. Maybe he wanted to be good. Maybe he tried. But Rome didn't let him. Or maybe he didn't let himself. Either way, you're here now, watching him stand at the threshold of his own bedroom as if it were a battlefield. The pillows are fluffed. The sheets are silk. The guards are stationed. But something still stops him. He sighs, rubs his temples, turns back down the hall. Another lap. Another hour. The stars shift. The lamps sputter. Rome, outside the palace walls, dreams deeply. But Domitian? He continues his pilgrimage through marble corridors, haunted by sleep he cannot trust. And you follow. Quiet. Careful. Half hoping he forgets you're even there. You've been walking with Domitian for hours now, though walking doesn't quite capture the rhythm. It's more like drifting, like he's caught in a loop, a haunted marble metronome, ticking out his fear in footsteps. Outside, the sky begins to bleed into that grayish pre-dawn haze, but inside, the palace still lives in artificial twilight. You've lost count of how many hallways you've passed. You half expect to turn a corner and meet yourself coming back the other way. In this strange, flickering cocoon of lamplight, Domitian doesn't speak much. But when he does, it's not to you. It's to the air, the gods, maybe to his own echo. The words are disjointed. Backstabbers in silk, he mutters. They never blink, not even in dreams. It's tempting to laugh, but you don't. Because you're beginning to feel it too. The tension. The weight, the sense that eyes are watching from places too shadowy for sculpture. Domitian wasn't raised to rule. He wasn't even in the same league as his brother Titus, the man who helped rebuild Rome after the eruption of Vesuvius. Titus was adored handsome, heroic, basically a marble statue with abs and empathy. Domitian, on the other hand, was more like a forgotten footnote who somehow kept being underlined. During his youth, The mission had few friends and fewer allies. While Titus went off to fight wars and win hearts, Domitian spent his days buried in scrolls, quietly cultivating a mind, sharp enough to cut glass and maybe a few throats too. He became a man who trusted architecture more than people. Stones didn't lie. Walls didn't smile at you before stabbing you in the back. And that mindset shaped the palace you now wander. This is not a home. It's a fortress wrapped in velvet. Every room is designed to confuse, mislead, protect. Secret staircases, false doors, odd angles. The palace became an extension of Domitian's mental, asymmetrical, beautiful, utterly exhausting dot when he became emperor. He commissioned vast renovations to the Domus Flavia, the palace complex on the Palatine Hill. Marble was laid over marble. Rooms expanded into gardens that hid other rooms. Historians still argue whether these architectural choices were for aesthetics or paranoia. You can probably guess which side we're leaning toward. But even with his dream maze of mirrored halls and illusion doors, Domitian didn't rest. He installed hidden peepholes to watch the watchers. He made sure that no two guards worked consecutive shifts. Servants had to announce their presence with soft claps, no whispering, no side glances. One rumor claimed he had the walls of his bedroom thinned just enough so he could hear footsteps 3 rooms away. Tonight, you pass one of the more peculiar renovations, a hallway lined entirely with polished obsidian panels. It reflects your image darkly, like you're made of ink. Domitian pauses here every night, stares into it. Not out of vanity, he doesn't admire himself. No, it's more like he's checking to make sure he's still there, that the shadows haven't finally swallowed him whole. He steps forward and runs a hand along the surface. It's always darker in dreams. He murmurs. You nod. Or maybe you blink. Either way, it's enough to remind him you exist. Do you sleep? He asks suddenly. The air stiffens. You weren't expecting a question. But it's not really about you. It never is. I don't, he adds, answering himself. Not deeply. Not anymore. I had a dream once. I was a lion. And everyone clapped. Then I woke up, and someone had poisoned my dog. He chuckles. It's dry, unsettling. I don't even like dogs. You continue walking. Somewhere along this midnight pilgrimage, you realize Domitian has started speaking in riddles. He's not trying to confuse you. He's trying to make sense of his own tangled thoughts. He's a man unspooling at the seams, sewing himself back together with superstition and suspicion. And the thing is, it kind of works. Underneath the paranoia, the emperor was oddly competent. Efficient, even. He passed useful laws, fought corruption, paid the military generously, which kept their loyalty. Roman roads were maintained, temples repaired. He even streamlined taxes, though that mostly meant collecting them faster, not necessarily more fairly. He insisted on being called Dominus et Deus, Lord and God, which, okay, bit much. But it reflected how he saw himself. The lone sane man in a city of liars. If he had to become divine to survive, so be it. He wasn't interested in being loved. He wanted control. And if he couldn't have peace of mind, he'd settle for silence. He once ordered that all palace doors be triple oiled to eliminate creaks. One day, he executed a guard whose sandals squeaked dot. Yeah, dot at some point. You pass a mural painted across a high vaulted ceiling, Apollo dragging the sun in his chariot, chased by Persephone and a few startled geese for some reason. The geese weren't part of the myth. Domitian added them. He thought it balanced the composition. He was like that, an odd blend of obsessive formality and dreamlike impulse. A senator once gifted him a marble sundial shaped like a turtle. Domitian thanked him, then buried it in the garden because the turtle's eyes moved when he wasn't looking. That senator retired to the countryside shortly thereafter, voluntarily. Technically, you're beginning to understand why he couldn't sleep. The whole empire felt like a threat. He wasn't wrong, exactly, people did plot against him. But the way he responded guaranteed that even more would try. His insomnia fed his paranoia, and his paranoia fueled his policies, which then justified the insomnia. A perfect imperial feedback loop, and through it all, he kept walking. Even when exhausted, even when hallucinating from lack of rest, Domitian preferred motion to stillness. Stillness was vulnerable. Stillness meant thoughts. And thoughts meant nightmares. So he walks. And you, now fully committed to this strange nocturnal shift, walk with him. Past the golden columns. Past the cooled bronze braziers. Past guards pretending not to look tired. Past statues that somehow all seem to be judging you. You wonder what would have happened if Domitian had just slept? If he'd surrendered to dreams instead of fearing them? Maybe he would have softened. Maybe history would have remembered him differently. But he didn't. He COULDN single quotes T. Because in his world, dreams weren't rest, they were omens. And the Emperor was too busy trying to outwalk fate. You hear the change before you see it. His sandals slow. His breathing flattens. The long echoing hallway ends in a wide atrium, and beyond it, a sunless chamber thick with velvet curtains and the smell of perfumed oil. He's arrived at what? Passes for his office. Or maybe it's a sanctum. Or maybe just a trap he hasn't recognized yet. Domitian steps inside, waving off the guards with a flick. You follow in silence, not because you were invited, just because you've learned better than to leave him alone with his thoughts. There's a marble table at the center of the room, big enough to seat 10 senators comfortably, though Domitian never does. He sits at one end, like a solitary chess master, playing both sides of a game no one else knows is happening. He doesn't reach for a scroll, doesn't issue a command. He just sits, staring. You can practically hear the gears turning. Rome's most powerful man can't stop thinking, even when his brain begs for a break. When his brother Titus died, the city mourned, the streets filled with weeping citizens. Eulogies flowed like wine. Domitian, they say, barely flinched. He accepted the title of emperor with a nod, maybe a shrug. No grand speeches, no parades, just a quiet consolidation of power. Historians still argue whether Domitian loved his brother or hated him, or perhaps both in equal measure. What's clear is that the day Titus died, Domitian began his real life, one lived in perpetual motion, perpetual fear. You can see it now, the way his fingers tapped the cold marble table, like a nervous metronome marking time. His ascent to power wasn't dramatic. It was anticlimactic. No wars, no fanfare, no rebellion. Just an awkward torch passing. One moment, he was the quiet younger brother. The next, the man who controlled the Roman world. And everyone around him seemed disappointed, not terrified, not excited, just vaguely inconvenienced. Rome expected another Titus. What it got was Domitian, and Domitian noticed the shift in tone. He always noticed. Every awkward pause. Every half-hearted cheer. Every sideways glance. These things dug into him more than any dagger ever could. You watch as he unrolls a scroll, not a policy document, but a list of names. Not enemies, exactly. More like uncertainties. Question marks. He reads the names aloud, softly, tasting the syllables. Nerva, Clemens, Junius. You recognize a few. Senators. Former allies. One of them, you're pretty sure, is dead. He circles that one anyway. Can't be too careful, he murmurs. He's not joking. Domitian developed a habit early in his reign. Writing names. Lists. Enemies. Suspects. People who smiled too long. People who didn't smile at all. Some he punished. Some he just watched. Others He erased not with violence, necessarily, but with paperwork. Condemned to silence. Their statues removed. Their names scratched from stone. It was called damnatio memoria, the damnation of memory. One senator, Tacitus, wrote later that under Domitian, people learned to say nothing and remember less. You can see why. The irony? Domitian believed these lists helped him sleep. They didn't, of course, but they gave him the illusion of control. Like if he could just keep track of everyone who might one day betray him, he could preempt fate itself. One night, it's said, he woke up gasping, convinced he dreamed of a man wearing red shoes killing him. By morning, every man in the palace was ordered to wear neutral tones. Red was banned for a month. Even the flower arrangements had to be reworked. Sleep makes most people forget. Domitian wasn't most people. Sleep made him remember too much. So he resisted it. Instead, he created rituals. Every evening, the palace curtains were drawn tight, not just in his bedroom, but across the entire upper level. Servants wore soft shoes. Meals were served in absolute silence. No spoons scraping against bowls. Number. Wine sloshing. Even laughter when it happened was oddly muted, like everyone was trying not to wake a baby who wasn't actually asleep. Domitian never dined in public. His meals were solitary, often at strange hours. He liked peacock tongues. Yes, tongues. Dozens at a time. Not because they tasted good. He once said they didn't, but because the absurdity of it made him feel cleverer than the cooks. Historians still debate whether this eccentricity was strategic, meant to unsettle his court, or whether the man simply found solace in the bizarre. You're leaning toward the latter, especially now, as you watch him pour himself a drink from a flask shaped like a sea monster. Its eyes glow faintly in the lamplight. You're not sure if that's a design feature or something darker. He drinks slowly, watches the light. Then, suddenly asks, "What if I just stopped?" You pause. He doesn't clarify. Stop the names, the checking, the all of this. He gestures at the room, the palace, maybe the entire empire. But his hand trembles slightly as it falls. And you know he's not serious. Domitian stopping would be like fire deciding to cool down. It's not in his nature. Paranoia has calcified into personality. Fear has become ritual. The emperor doesn't know who he is without his insomnia, and that realization tightens the air. To him, the palace is a place of vigilance. To you, it's starting to feel like a padded cell. But you don't say that. You just stand there, listening to the ticking of an invisible clock, the one in Domitian's mind, always counting. Down to something. He scribbles another name. The candle beside him flickers, then dies. He doesn't notice. You do. You're back in motion again. Domitian never lingers for long. He stands, scroll in hand, and heads for one of the darker wings of the palace. You fall in behind him, past a tapestry of Minerva smiting ignorance with a spear. Fitting. The torches flicker on cue as he passes. Someone, somewhere, is always lighting them ahead of time. Anticipation is a survival tactic in this palace. The wing you're entering now has no windows. The heavy drapes never part. Here, even daylight is forbidden. It's one of Domitian's stranger rules. This part of the palace must remain in perpetual dusk. The emperor claims the natural light gives him headaches. But the truth? You suspect it's about control. He lives in a carefully curated gloom, where nothing moves unless he wills it, and the sun can't peer through without permission. He once described the sun as too bold, and had mirrors removed from his private study because the glare startled him. The emperor, it seems, prefers twilight, not because it soothes him, but because it doesn't surprise him. Historians still argue whether this aversion to light was physical, some odd sensitivity, or psychological. A symbolic rejection of Rome's transparency. Domitian was not a Man who basked in the forum's adoration. He ruled from behind curtains, not balconies, and you feel it now in this lightless wing. The air is thicker here, perfumed with cedar oil, but stale in a way that suggests time itself forgets to pass. Through. You pass a room with violet drapes drawn across its entry, behind them, silence. Inside is a chamber Domitian designed purely for thinking. No furniture, no art, just a padded floor and a ceiling painted black with tiny gold stars. He calls it his second sky. Helps me sort the noise, he told someone once. That someone was later exiled. You hope that wasn't because of the follow-up question. But tonight, he bypasses the second sky. He enters a smaller room just past it, his retreat within the retreat. It's sparsely decorated. A narrow couch. A side table shaped like a laurel. Leaf. A water clock in the corner drips steadily. You expect him to sit. He DOESN single quotes T. Instead, he goes to the corner, where a series of elaborate curtains hangs across the wall. He pulls one back. Behind it, a hidden mirror. Gilded, smudged, strange. He gazes into it. Domitian's relationship with mirrors is complicated. In his early reign, he filled the palace with them. Not for vanity, but for vigilance. A mirror lets you see behind you. But over time, he began to suspect they showed too much reflections he couldn't explain. Shadows where none should be. Once, he claimed a mirror revealed a man standing over his bed. There was no man, but the mirror was smashed. And ever since, he's kept this one hidden, his honest mirror, as he calls it. You glance into it and see nothing unusual. Just two tired figures in a tired room. But Domitian watches like he expects a prophecy. He leans closer, taps the glass once, nods to himself. Still breathing, he says, and steps away. This would be funny if it weren't so heavy. The palace is full of these strange rituals. Rooms that must be passed through in a certain order. Statues that can't be touched on. Tuesdays, a bust of Apollo that must always face west. You're pretty sure someone was demoted last week for rotating it the wrong way during a cleaning. These aren't superstitions for Domitian. They're safeguards. Psychic armor against dreams and betrayals. It's in this room that he issues some of his oddest commands. No scribes allowed. Just him, a memory, and a servant with incredible handwriting waiting in the hallway. Once, he summoned a poet and asked him to recite verses backward. When the man stammered, Domitian accused him of concealing messages. That poet now copies farming manuals in exile. Domitian doesn't do this because he's cruel. He does it because he's afraid, and because the fear has hollowed out the line between caution and cruelty until there's nothing left but instinct. You can see it now in the way he presses his fingertips against his temple, as if trying to hold his own skull together. And then comes the most unexpected sound. A sigh. A real one. Deep. Tired. It leaves him like steam from a boiling pot, finally. Taken off the fire. You see his shoulders slump slightly. Just a hair. The closest thing to rest, he allows. He gestures for you to sit. You hesitate. But when an emperor gestures, you don't stall. Do you think, he asks, eyes not on you, but on the corner of the room, that the gods ever sleep? You don't answer. You suspect he doesn't want one. I used to think Jupiter watched me, he continues. Watched and judged. But now I think he's tired too. Maybe bored. There's a silence. Then, I've built too much. You know what he means. The palace. The rules. The empire itself. It's all so heavy. 1,000-ton monument to suspicion. Outside, you hear a faint bell. Just once. Dawn is near. The city is waking. But Domitian's night isn't over. He stands again, and this time, pulls open a cabinet hidden behind the drape. Inside is a bronze dagger. Its blade is thin, curved slightly, ritualistic. He doesn't take it out. He just stares. Every emperor dreams of his death, he whispers. Mine keeps changing. And you believe him. Because no matter how many layers of curtains he adds, how many names he circles, how many mirrors he breaks, Domitian is trapped in the one palace he can't escape his own mind. And it is always nighttime there. You follow him again. This time, his pace is slower. Not tired, exactly. Domitian never shows weakness, but measured. Like someone walking through a memory he hasn't decided to trust. You're back in the central wing now, where the walls are clean-cut marble inlaid with veins of lapis. It's supposed to feel imperial, imposing, but somehow it feels like walking inside a very beautiful tomb. He turns abruptly down a narrower passage. This one wasn't meant for an emperor. It's part of the older palace infrastructure servants' quarters, repurposed over time. But Domitian likes it here. No frescoes. No statues judging you from alcoves. Just stone, oil lamps, and the hum of old air. The silence here is thicker. A good place for secrets. He stops in front of a doorway. It's unmarked, like all the rooms in this wing. He steps inside. You hesitate, then follow Dot. It's a long, narrow room, and every surface glints slightly in the dim light. Mirrors. Dozens of them. Big ones, small ones, round ones, some cracked, some warped. Most are covered by dark cloths. Domitian calls this place the Hall of Reflections, or sometimes the Trap. He doesn't visit often, but when he does, it's usually near dawn. Like now. He walks between them, brushing one with his hand. You ever watch yourself sleep? He asks you without turning. You haven't, but you get the sense he has. When I was younger, he continues, I had a mirror beside my bed. I thought, maybe if I could see myself, I wouldn't be surprised by what I became. He pauses. In front of one mirror, removes the cloth, and looks into it. You do the same. The glass is old wavy, slightly smoky around the edges. It makes you look like someone who hasn't rested in years. Fitting. The truth is, Domitian didn't just fear his enemies. He feared himself, and what he might do if left unchecked. Hence the mirrors. 1,000 watchful eyes, but also 1,000 distorted selves. Which one is the real emperor? Which is just reflection? Historians still argue whether Domitian's infamous paranoia was justified or self-inflicted. The record is patchy. Some sources portray him as a tyrant. Others as a misunderstood reformer who alienated Rome's elite because he refused to play their games. The only thing they all agree on? He didn't sleep much. And that, somehow, made everything worse. He passes another mirror and chuckles. That one, he says, used to show me dead. You glance at it. There's nothing odd about it. Just your face, tired and dim. But not anymore, he continues. Now it shows me ... waiting. You decide not to ask what that means. He paces the room slowly, pulling cloths off more mirrors. Each one reveals a different version of him, some fierce, some hollow, one disturbingly serene. The Emperor studies them like he's reading omens, as if somewhere in this fractured gallery lies the version of himself that finally sleeps. This room is his paradox, a place of watching and of being watched, of seeing and never quite understanding. You suspect it mirrors his rule entirely. He steps in front of the largest mirror floor to ceiling with a faint gold rim. This one he addresses directly. I know you're in there, he whispers. The man who isn't afraid. He waits. Nothing moves. Then he sighs. You're not sure whether to feel sympathy or dread. Because here's the thing. Domitian isn't mad. Not exactly. He's lucid, astute. He sees threats because threats do exist. But somewhere along the way, he stopped trusting the difference between fear and foresight. And when you stop making that distinction, Everything becomes a trap waiting to spring. He turns toward you now, suddenly animated. I installed mirrors in the council chamber, he says, voice sharp. Above the doors, above the heads. They didn't know. I saw them check each other, whisper, look down when I entered. Every time. He steps closer. I once saw a man flinch when I coughed. Just a cough, but it meant something. He laughs quiet and bitter. I think he's dead now, maybe. You're not sure if that was a joke. He walks again, the energy. Fading. You know what sleep does? He says, it lets you forget, and I can't afford to forget. And you know what he means, because in this empire, memory is a weapon. And forgetting a fatal luxury done as a ruler, Domitian excelled at remembering. Every insult, every betrayal, every face that turned just a little too quickly away from him in the Forum. He didn't rule Rome like a father or a god. He ruled it like a ledger carefully balanced, coldly kept. He even installed informants. In places no one had before. Theaters, temples, public baths. Everyone was a suspect. Everyone was observed. Some say this made Rome safer. Others say it made it unbearable. Either way, it made Domitian sleepless. He sits now on a low bench in the middle of the mirror room, surrounded by 100 versions of himself watching, reflecting, judging. He looks not at you, but at his own reflection. I want to sleep, he says finally, but I'm afraid of what I'll see. You don't answer. You wouldn't know what to say. There's a long silence. Then, as if shaking off a weight, he rises, walks to the exit, leaves the mirrors uncovered behind him, dozens of Domitians staring in every direction. He pauses at the threshold, doesn't look back. They'll say I was mad, he murmurs, but at least I was awake. And just like that, the emperor vanishes into the next hallway. The hall feels colder now, as if the mirror room siphoned away a little of the palace's warmth, or maybe it just siphoned yours. You follow Domitian into yet another corridor, one with vaulted ceilings and niches filled with statues. These aren't of gods or ancestors, though. No, these are Domitian's own commission's idealized likenesses of himself. There he is, striking a victory pose over a barbarian. There again, seated like Jupiter with a thunderbolt in one hand and a scroll in the other. There once more, younger, clean-shaven, eternally composed. And here, a newer one. Older, bearded, tired, but with piercing eyes that follow you as you walk past. You can't help but think, who is he trying to convince? Domitian isn't the first emperor to build his own pantheon, of course. But he's the first to spread them through his private quarters, his bedrooms, his baths. Not just for public adoration, but for personal reminder. I am Domitian. The marble says, I am still here. I am real. Historians still argue whether Domitian's self-worship was sincere megalomania or a desperate psychological crutch. Either way, the effect is eerie. You walk among clones. Dozens of Domitians, locked in white stone, staring back as if daring you to blink first. He stops in front of one. This one is different. The statue is broken. Just the torso remains, the head lying nearby, cracked in two. Domitian kneels and touches the shattered jaw. I like this one, he murmurs. You stay quiet. It was a gift. From a province I've since forgotten. They said the eyes were modeled on constellations. I had it placed here, where I could see it at night. He stands, but it fell. No one knows why. I had the artist exiled. That last line is said without remorse, as if it were a note in the margins of a dream. You watch him regard the broken statue, and for a moment, you think, maybe this is the real emperor. The one who whispers to marble? Because it's less judgmental than senators. Domitian's obsession with symbolism was legendary. He believed in omens, portents, prophetic dreams. He would pause entire government sessions if an owl appeared near the Capitol Hill. He once canceled a feast because someone sneezed 3 times before dessert. To outsiders, this was madness. But to Domitian, it was order. A world of clues and signals, a map to survival drawn in gestures and weather patterns and the flight paths of birds. Sleep, by contrast, offered no control. Dreams were unstructured, wild, full of betrayal. He trusted dreams the way most people trust serpents in their soup. You pass through another arch, and suddenly the palace opens into an unexpected space, a private library, smaller than the grand libraries of Rome, but opulent all the same. Mahogany, shelves, scrolls bound with dyed silk, a few tablets stacked in neat rows. Domitian walks to a side table and selects a scroll at random. He unrolls it, glances at the text, then scoffs. Seneca, he mutters, always writing like he invented thinking. He tosses the scroll onto the floor with a bored flick of the wrist. He's restless again. The moment of quiet in the mirror. Room is gone. Now he paces. The library is his insomnia playground, a place for late-night rants, manic bursts of reading, and occasional bouts of philosophical loathing. He picks up another scroll. This one, he reads aloud. It's a poem. Something about sleep and peace and the gentle hands of Hypnos. He stops midline. Hypnos, he repeats. The god of sleep. How pathetic. And yet, the tension in his jaw betrays him. His hatred of sleep masks something deeper. Envy. Longing. The cruelest torment isn't the fear of nightmares. It's watching others wake from them. In one corner of the library is a peculiar object. A low bronze brazier with herbs smoldering faintly. Lavender, poppy, bay leaf. A concoction meant to induce calm. His physician's suggestion. You're surprised he still keeps it lit. Doesn't work, he says, reading your mind. But the smell is tolerable. And then he does something. Strange. He sits. For once, he doesn't pace, doesn't mutter, doesn't circle the room like a hawk in a cage. He simply sits. The brazier casts a soft red glow over his face, flickering along the tired lines beneath his eyes. You sit too, unsure if this is a trap or a rare moment of actual rest. Domitian glances toward a nearby window, shuttered, of course. But a sliver of light leaks in from the cracks. Morning isn't far now. The city stirs. The vendors will soon begin calling out their wares. Cloaks, chickpeas, fresh olives. Life returning to the streets. But here, inside the heart of the empire, time holds its breath. Domitian leans back slightly. The chair creaks. I dreamed of my death, he says suddenly. A man with ink-stained hands. He stabbed me not once, but 7 times. Each wound said a word. You swallow, but say nothing. I only remember 2 of them, he adds. Silence and sleep. He stares into the brazier. Maybe the gods are mocking me. Maybe I mocked them. First, historians often paint Domitian as a godless tyrant, yet his private records, what survived them, hint at something different. A man who feared the gods, not because he didn't believe, but because he did. And he suspected they didn't like what they saw. You watch him close his eyes for a full second. 2, 3. Then they snap open again. Not yet, he whispers. Not to you. To himself. And the moment passes. He stands once more, pulls his cloak around his shoulders, and leaves the library without a word. You follow. But the image remains burned behind you. The emperor, surrounded by forgotten scrolls and smoldering herbs, daring sleep to touch him, and daring himself not to want it. The halls are different now. Not grand, not ceremonial. Just quiet plain stucco walls, floors swept clean but unadorned. You're in the service wing, where even the torches burn lower, smaller, more practical. The mission doesn't come here often. But tonight, his feet seem to guide him without thought. Down corridors, even his guards don't patrol. A place for ghosts and memories, not politics. He pauses before a narrow doorway. You expect him to move on. Instead, he opens it and steps inside. It's a bedroom. Small, Spartan. A low bed with folded blankets. No frescoes, no gold trim. Just a clay lamp on a wooden table and a pair of sandals placed neatly by the door. This was mine, he says without looking at you. You realize what he means. This was his room before the marble, before the mirrors, before the title, before the burden. When Vespasian returned to Rome and took the purple, Domitian was still treated like a junior official. Unimportant, unthreatening, a background figure at his father's grand banquets, overshadowed by Titus's war glories. This little room, tucked in the quietest part of the palace, was where he slept then back when he still could sleep. He steps inside slowly, brushing his fingers along the rough plaster. No one disturbed me here, he says. Not even the gods. The silence that follows is almost reverent, and you can't help but wonder, what changed? Was it power that took sleep from him? Or was it loss? Because something was lost. Not just rest or comfort. Something deeper. Maybe belief or safety. Maybe the sense that the world wouldn't turn on him the moment he closed his eyes. He sits on the edge of the bed. Doesn't lie down, he never does, but lets his hands rest in his lap. I used to think ambition would make me whole, he says. Like if I climbed high enough, the voices would go quiet. But they didn't. They got louder. You think of all the halls you've walked with him. The endless loops. The sleepless nights built like fortresses. And you realize this is the only room where he's ever sat without bracing for something. He picks up the clay lamp and studies the flame. It's small, wavering. I don't remember my last good dream, he says. Historians still argue whether Domitian's cruelty was born of fear or frustration, whether his executions were strategic or impulsive, whether he was shaped by the paranoia of Roman politics or whether he shaped it with his own mistrust. But in this room, stripped of all that marble and myth, the answer feels simpler. The man was tired. Sleep deprivation does strange things to the mind. It erodes confidence, inflates suspicion. It turns small annoyances into threats, and threats into certainties. And for someone already obsessed with control, sleep becomes the ultimate vulnerability. Domitian once ordered a general recalled from Germania, simply because he signed his letters with too much flourish. He executed a steward for misplacing a bowl. And he declared a 3-day mourning period when his favorite scribe sneezed and died unexpectedly because he was convinced it had been an omen aimed at him. It wasn't always like this. Some sources describe early Domitian as thoughtful, even poetic. He sponsored art, wrote plays, tried briefly to rule with patience. But patience wears thin when every whisper sounds like a dagger unsheathed. He once said, during a Senate address, "Let no one sleep soundly until Rome is safe." And you suspect that wasn't a threat to others. It was a prophecy for himself. You watch him now, alone in this tiny room, as dawn presses against the world outside. He looks small. Not weak, but reduced. A man who built palaces to house his fear, and found that marble only echoes louder in the quiet. Then, without warning, he stands. Back to pacing. It was too much. Even this room, this fragile time capsule, can't hold him for long. The bed remains undisturbed, the clay lamp flickering alone. He leaves the room as if escaping a dream he almost let himself have. Back in the hallway, the mood changes. I can't stay here, he says. This place remembers too much. And you understand. Because memory is the other thing he fears, maybe even more than sleep. Memories can't be controlled. They arrive uninvited, unedited, and they whisper truths that no Senate decree can. Erase. You pass a courtyard now, open to the sky. The first light of morning spills in, turning the stones pale gold. Domitian shields his eyes. He hates this part, when night concedes and the world starts up again. But he pauses in the doorway. I had a dog once, he says, apropos of nothing. Small thing, greedy. Always slept belly up, like it trusted the world. He doesn't say what happened to the dog. He doesn't have to. He turns away from the light, because even here, in a city carved from stone and story, sleep is too soft, too trusting, too much like lying belly up and believing the world won't strike. And Domitian never believed that. Not really. So he walks on one more hallway. One more loop. Always one more. The light grows stronger now, slipping between shutters and seams in the palace stone. But Domitian continues deeper, moving not toward the sunrise, but away from it as though morning itself is another intruder he hasn't yet vetted. You trail behind him through a corridor you don't recognize. Narrower than the rest. Uneven floor tiles. Damp air. The torchlight dances strangely here, casting crooked shadows that seem to lean in when you're not looking. This part, Domitian says quietly, wasn't on the original plans. You raise an eyebrow, not that he's looking. Built after the fire, after Galba, after Vespasian. I had it added. Some rooms are only for rulers, and their regrets. He leads you into a chamber that feels more cavern than hall. The ceiling dips low, and the walls are thick with mineral veins, not decoration, just raw geology. It's cold. Not physically, but emotionally. The kind of place where truths are kept when they're too messy for the Senate to debate. In the center of the room is a stone pedestal. On it, a single item, a funerary mask, silver-plated, with wide almond eyes and a faint, knowing smile. That, Domitian says, was my father's. You blink. It doesn't look like the gruff, pragmatic Vespasian from the statues. It looks gentler, younger, but he's telling the truth. You feel it. He hated it, Domitian adds. Said it made him look theatrical. I kept it anyway. He doesn't touch the mask. Just circles the pedestal slowly. My father slept soundly. He says, half wistful. Snored, even. I once asked him how he did it. He told me, when you've paid the gods their dues, and your stomach's full of lentils, there's nothing left to worry about. You're not sure whether to laugh or sigh. Domitian's stomach is full. His gods have been appeased 100 times over, but the worry, that never left. It clung to him like incense in a temple sacred smoky. Impossible to scrub away. He gestures to a side alcove, dimly lit, containing a large tablet etched with names. Not carved, scratched. Hundreds of them. You can barely read most. Some are crossed out, others circled. Some underlined twice. Dreams I've had, he explains. Every name that came to me while sleeping. Some I knew. Others ... not yet. You stare at it. Historians say it's a list of enemies, he adds. But it's not. It's a list of suspects. And suspects are not necessarily guilty. Just ... unsettling. He speaks like someone explaining the weather. Calm. Almost bored. But you know better. This is what his insomnia has become. A prophecy generator. A random feed of imagined betrayals and past conversations restructured into puzzles. His dreams aren't rest. They're investigations. And in Rome, even a dream has consequences. One of the names P. Cluvius Rufus is underlined so heavily the tablet has cracked through it. Senator, Domitian mutters. Once looked at me too long during a vote. That night, I dreamed. Stood over my bed with a lamp. What happened to him? You ask, before you can stop yourself. Domitian shrugs. Nothing. Yet. You realize then that this chamber is his subconscious, carved into stone. Every cracked tablet, every erased name, Every corner he built to hide a thought he couldn't express in daylight. This isn't just architecture. It's autobiography. Historians still argue whether this room ever existed. Some say it's a legend told by guards to scare new recruits. Others claim it was found years after Domitian's death. The walls stripped. Bare. The name tablet shattered. But the very fact that it might have existed says everything you need to know about the man. Domitian approaches the funerary mask again. For the first time, he reaches out but doesn't touch. His fingers hover just inches away. "I wonder," he murmurs, "if my own mask will smile." You don't answer. He doesn't wait for one. "I had one made," he adds after a moment. "Of myself. Silver, like this." But the eyes were wrong. Too alert. You try to picture it. Domitian's face cast in silver, immortalized in the moment between suspicion and certainty. The last face you'd want to meet in a dream. Suddenly, he turns to you, sharply. "Do you think I'll be remembered?" he asks. The question catches you off guard, not because it's unusual, but because it's so human. You think of all of statues, the scrolls, the names, the mirror rooms, the paranoia, the policies, the people who whispered his name in awe, in fear, in hate. "You'll be remembered," you say. He nods, once. "Good," he replies. "Even if they get it wrong." And, just like that, he's moving again. The corridor rises slightly, and the air warms as you ascend. The chambers behind you fade into shadow. Domitian doesn't look back. You're not sure he ever will. As he walks, he hums something under his breath. A melody, maybe, or a rhythm. One you don't recognize. It doesn't sound Roman. It doesn't sound imperial. It sounds tired at the top of the stairs. The palace returns to its polished splendor. Gilded sconces, painted ceilings, tiled mosaics of mythic scenes. It's the Rome he shows the world. But now, you've seen the hidden version. The half-lit halls beneath the throne. The catalog of midnight thoughts. And in that silence, you begin to understand the true shape of his insomnia. It's not just sleeplessness. It's a defense mechanism, a strategy, a curse, and most of all, a companion. One he's not quite ready to let go. The golden halls are waking now. You hear the murmur of sandals on stone, distant voices from the servants' wing, the metallic jingle of the Praetorian Guard shifting into their daytime posts. But Domitian walks as though none of it matters. He isn't part of the city's rhythm. He floats beside it, untouched, detached, watching. You trail him into an upper wing you haven't seen before. It's newer, less classical, more ambitious. The walls here gleam with polished marble streaked like thunderclouds. The ceilings are coffered in deep blues and blacks, dotted with flecks of silver leaf meant to resemble stars. Domitian calls. It is astral corridor. You've heard rumors of it. A vanity project, some said. Others whispered that he had it built after a night spent watching a comet blaze across the sky, one he took as a sign. A reminder that greatness is fleeting. And terrifyingly visible. He stops mid-hall and gazes upward. "I wanted to become the sky," he says flatly. That was the idea. If people feared the heavens, and I was the heavens. He doesn't finish the thought. He doesn't need to. Historians still debate whether this hallway had a purpose beyond aesthetics. Some claimed it was a meditation space. Others insisted Domitian held secret councils here under starlight-shaped chandeliers, seeking advice only from those he trusted not to blink. He walks to the wall and presses, his palm against a slab of obsidian set into the stone. It's warm, somehow. You feel the heat as you approach. "I had this brought from Syria," he murmurs. "They told me it absorbs dreams, traps them like insects in amber." You wonder if he believes that. Of course he does. There's a strange beauty to the corridor an artificial night crafted for a man who could never find peace in the real one. A simulated sky where no gods dwell, only Domitian's carefully designed firmament, where stars can't fall and nothing is ever beyond control. You reach the end of the corridor, where a low arch leads to a circular chamber. This one's different. Again intimate, almost tender. Draped in navy fabric, lit by floating oil lamps, the floor is covered in thick rugs from Parthia. The walls curve gently inward, like the inside of a giant bowl. Domitian calls this his echo chamber. Literally, he speaks. Domitian. The name reverberates softly back, not harsh, not mocking, just present. It never forgets a voice. He tells you, even after hours, say something. You hesitate. Then whisper, sleep. It comes back, distant and unsure. Sleep. Sleep? He smiles, faintly. I wanted it to echo the things I forget. I thought, maybe if I said my fears out loud, the room would carry them for me. You can't help but admire the idea. A place to offload the unbearable. He sits cross-legged on the rug, like a philosopher or a child. His expression softens in the lamp glow. This chamber, more than any other, seems to loosen something inside him. Do you know what I dream now? He asks quietly. You don't. I'm in the forum, surrounded by people, but I'm the only one who's naked. Everyone else wears masks of me. He chuckles, but it's hollow. Sometimes I chase them. Sometimes they chase me. And sometimes I just watch. It's a haunting image. You wonder how long he's carried that one. How many nights it's returned. How many mornings he's woken unsure whether it was just a dream or a prophecy. Domitian draws a shape in the rug with his finger, an endless spiral. There's something about not sleeping, he says, that makes you forget what you were like before you stopped. You nod, because now you feel it too, the heaviness of too much watching. The ache behind the eyes from staring at flickering flames and stone walls too long. The sense that time isn't passing anymore, it's just accumulating. He looks up suddenly. You think they'll remember the buildings? You frown. What buildings? He gestures vaguely. All of them. The arches, the halls, the temples I restored, the libraries, the roads, the drains. Ah, those buildings. Domitian, for all his sleepless paranoia, had a near-obsessive streak of efficiency. He strengthened Rome's coinage, standardized provincial taxation, built roads through swamps where no engineer dared before, rebuilt parts of the city still scarred from Nero's fires, even instituted a fund to support the children of impoverished Roman citizens, a rare gesture of public compassion. But no one talks about that. They talk about the executions, the informants, the statues of himself. Domitian shakes his head. They'll forget all the stone, but they'll remember my shadow. You want to disagree. You don't. He lies back now, just for a moment. Arms out, eyes open, looking at the tiny flames dancing in the high ceiling. This is the only place I can pretend, he whispers, that I've already died. You're startled, but not entirely surprised, because that's what this chamber is, in its own way. A rehearsal space for the afterlife. A room where his voice will echo, even when his body's gone. You stay silent, giving him that moment. Giving him the illusion that someone else, anyone, can hold the weight of memory for him. Then he sits up, fast, like he's remembered something. No more stargazing, he mutters. There's always more to do. And once again, he's on his feet. You follow him out. The chamber dims behind you, but the echoes, they linger. Sleep, sleep. The echoes fade as you re-enter the main palace wing into a corridor too wide, too grand, too polished to feel real after the dark serenity of the echo chamber. Everything here gleams. Polished marble floors, gilded door frames, ceilings painted with myth. You can almost hear senators practicing their flattery in the air, like dust caught in sunlight. But Domitian doesn't pause to admire his own architecture. He moves swiftly now, purposeful. His footsteps land sharper. Somewhere deep within, the day has begun, and the emperor is already racing to outpace it. You follow him into a hall lined with busts. Not of gods or heroes this time, but of Rome's great thinkers. Cicero, Lucretius, Marcus Agrippa, even Seneca, whom he loathes but grudgingly respects. Domitian calls this place the council that never interrupts. You imagine him here at night, walking slowly past stone brows furrowed in thought, whispering arguments to himself that no one will refute. The ultimate safe debate. He stops in front of a bust of Cato the Younger. Insomniac, he mutters. Famously, slept only 3 hours a night, refused cushions. He studies the face as if expecting a nod of solidarity. Historians still argue whether that made him brilliant or unbearable. He adds, almost proudly. He brushes a fleck of dust from Cato's nose. Some men wake early to conquer the day. Others wake because the day won't let them rest. Cato might have been both. Then, quietly, I'm not. You move on. The busts continue one after another. Philosophers with unblinking eyes, frozen in the middle of unsolvable questions. Domitian steps slow again. I used to argue with them, he says. In here, I'd pace and shout counterpoints at their stone faces. I won every time. He smiles faintly, but his voice lacks triumph. That's the irony of sleep deprivation. It grants you time, but at the cost of proportion. Every idea becomes an obsession. Every echo a prophecy. Every silence a conspiracy. And every victory, especially the imaginary one, starts to taste like ash. You reach a final bust, tucked slightly away from the others. It's unlabeled, less polished. The face is young, hopeful, slightly awkward. You recognize it. It's Domitian himself. You glance at him. He doesn't acknowledge it. Made them include me, he says after a pause. Didn't want to. But the symmetry was wrong without it. You think, that's the most honest reason he's ever given. He leans against the wall beside his own bust and closes, his eyes not in rest, but in calculation. I once asked a dream interpreter what it meant when you keep seeing yourself die, he says. He told me, it means you still care. And you believed him? You asked. He opens one eye. No, I had him reassigned to the grain archives. Classic DOMITIAN. You continue through the hall and into a chamber lit differently from the rest. Natural light pouring through a skylight high above. A sunbeam spills directly onto a low table covered in open scrolls. Military reports. Senate records. Personal letters, some unopened, still sealed with wax. Domitian enters and immediately picks one up. Breaks the seal. Reads half a line. Then tosses it back onto the pile like it bit him. Another petition, he says. Everyone wants something. A road. A wall. A title. A pardon. He picks up another. This one wants me to ban mimes again. You raise an eyebrow. Didn't you already? He shrugs. They keep reappearing, like mold or optimists. He sinks into a carved wooden chair, eyes flitting across the open scrolls. You see the exhaustion in his shoulders again, the tilt of his head, but still no sleep. Once, he says, I tried to delegate more. Let the magistrates handle the petitions. Let the generals write their own dispatches. What happened? You ask. He gestures broadly at the room. This happened. You realize he means all of it. The letters, the noise, the ceaseless paper trail of empire. You ever try to rest, he continues, knowing 1,000 strangers are waiting for your silence to become their opportunity. He leans forward, voice lower. Sleep is surrender. And in Rome, even that is watched. He picks up a stylus and absently scratches a word into the table, something in Greek. You can't quite read it. Do you want to? You ask quietly, "Want to what?" "Sleep." He doesn't answer right away. He taps the stylus against the table, thinking. Then, "Yes, but only if no one remembers I did." There's a pause. Then he stands again, always standing. "Come," he says. "Let's check the sundial. I've got a theory." You exit the chamber into a courtyard where a massive sundial is set into the pavement. Roman numerals ring the circle. A bronze gnomon rises at the center, casting a long, thin shadow. Domitian kneels, squints at the shadow. "It's slow today," he says. "They always slow when I'm tired." As if they know. You smile despite yourself. He sighs, dusts off his hands. Time plays tricks. But I've learned one thing. If you refuse to rest, time doesn't win. You just both grow older. You look around at the courtyard, the columns, the painted stucco, the trimmed laurel trees, and wonder how many of Rome's emperors stood here before him, staring at a sunlit shadow and hoping it told the truth. Domitian turns back toward the palace. "Let's walk again," he says. "We'll take the long way. There's a statue I need to glare at." And just like that, you're off again. The empire never sleeps. Neither does its emperor. You follow Domitian as he winds his way into a wing that feels almost accidental. The columns are narrower. The floors creak, yes, actual creak, which in a Roman palace is a minor scandal. There's no symmetry here, no forced perfection. Just old stone and older silence. "This was Nero's," he says, running a hand along the wall. "Or maybe Caligula's. The records don't agree. I kept it because it smells like failure." You arch an eyebrow, and I like knowing where failure lives. He adds. He pushes open a wooden door. Yes, wood. Not gilded or veneered, just aged and slightly warped. It leads into a rectangular room with faded murals. The gods half peeled from the plaster, their eyes blurred, their hands missing. You recognize Diana, maybe. Or is it Persephone? The details have softened with time. "I come here when I want to feel mortal," Domitian says, which sounds like something a man would only say after a sleepless week and a full day of issuing. Decrees about plumbing repairs and regional tax codes. He sits cross-legged on the cold floor without ceremony. You join him. "This room," he says slowly, "used to be part of a nursery." You blink. He nods. "Not mine. I think it was Nero's brother's. Before things got dramatic." There's that word again. Before. He uses it often, as if the past exists in chunks. Before power. Before mirrors. Before suspicion. Before sleep was a stranger. You trace a finger along a patch of fresco where a painted bird hovers mid-flight. The wall is cool, almost damp. Domanti, and stares up at the mural. "You know what keeps me awake sometimes? Not nightmares. Not threats. Just the idea that I might forget something important." He folds his arms. "I used to think I could hold it all in my head. Every name, every lie, every coin minted. But then I started waking up unsure of the date. The day of the week. The season." You nod slowly. That's how it begins. Memory blurs. Time becomes sludge. Everything folds into itself. He laughs. "Suddenly, one morning, I tried to issue a decree banning February. Thought it was a prank month. No one corrected me." You almost laugh with him, almost. "There's a freedom," he muses, "in never sleeping. You get more time to observe. More time to catch people lying. But less time to feel human?" You offer. He shoots you a sideways glance. "That too." And here it is again, that thin crack in the marble facade. Not vulnerability, not regret, just the recognition that something's gone missing. Historians still argue whether Domitian ever truly reflected on his actions, whether the man behind the reforms and purges and divine statues knew he'd one day be called a tyrant. Some say he lacked introspection. Others claim his entire sleepless reign was one long, agonized introspection with no outlet. This room, this former nursery turned forgotten sanctuary, feels like Exhibit A. Domitian shifts his weight and pulls something from his sleeve. A tiny bronze charm, a stylized eye, cracked in the middle. My mother gave me this, he says. Said it would ward off evil. He holds it up to the light. Didn't work. You wonder whether it was supposed to. He tucks it back into his sleeve and rises. You stand too. The murals fade behind you as you leave the room. The gods returning to their slow, quiet decay. Back in the corridor, he speaks again, voice low. Sometimes, when the palace is quiet, I try to count how many of my own decisions were made purely out of fear. And, you ask, I always fall short. Either I lose count, or I can't tell which were which. He says it with the air of a man cataloging furniture, not emotionless, just resigned. You pass through a small arch and arrive in a gallery filled with musical instruments. Lutes, pan flutes, a reconstructed hydraulic organ. Do you play? You ask. Domitian smiles faintly. No, but I like the idea that someone else might. Sometimes I sit here and pretend the music's just ended. He walks to his cithara and plucks a string. It twangs off key. See? Even my imagination is tired. He steps away and gestures toward a side chamber with hanging drapes and soft cushions. This was meant to be a meditation room. He explains. My advisor said I needed one. Said all the Eastern kings had them. Did it work? He snorts. No. I found the silence too. Silent. He picks up a cushion and drops it again. But I leave it here anyway, just in case I change. And there it is, that quiet confession. The one he won't put in any decree or marble inscription. He still thinks change is possible. Not likely, but not impossible. You sit again, this time on one of the cushions. He doesn't join you, just stands in the center of the room, arms folded, watching the sunlight crawl down the wall. I used to think I'd die suddenly, he says. Like Julius, brutal and theatrical. And now? You ask Dot, he closes his eyes. I think I'll just stop. Not die. Just reach a point where I can't walk the halls anymore. Can't remember the path. Can't count the echoes. Just drift. He opens his eyes, and then maybe I'll sleep. He steps toward the doorway, hesitates. I've given Rome everything, he says. Even my dreams. Especially my dreams. And with that, he turns and leaves. You follow. Another room. Another corridor. Another lap around the empire that never rests. The palace has changed again. Or maybe it's you who's changed after all this walking. You're starting to feel the hours now long hours with no clocks. Only flickering torches and the pacing of a man who hasn't truly exhaled in years. You pass under a vaulted arch painted with constellations, real ones this time, not the symbolic art of the astral corridor. Domitian looks up, muttering something under his breath. You catch one word, Aquarius. My birth sign, he says. According to the temple priests, I once asked if it meant anything useful. They told me I'd bring water to Rome. He waves a hand dismissively. I tripled the city's aqueduct budget the next day, just to make the prophecy true. You both laugh, briefly. He turns down another hallway one you don't recognize. It's dim, almost shadowless, with thin vertical slits in the walls that let in just a whisper of morning light. It feels like walking through a giant sundial shadow. Do you believe in fate? He asks out, the question floats behind him like smoke. You don't answer right away. I believe in plans, you finally say. Domitian smiles without humor. So did I, then they kept unraveling. He gestures around him. This corridor? This was meant to lead to a garden. A public one. Fountains, herbs, flowers, something open. What happened? Turns out, he says, I don't like people walking behind me. That one lands heavier than he probably intended. He stops near a thick door. This one is different, reinforced with bronze, unmarked. A guard stands nearby, stiff as marble. He nods and steps aside. Domitian opens the door. Inside is a chamber colder than the rest. Vaulted ceiling, thick walls, a single brazier lit low in the center. But what strikes you first is what lines the walls. Scrolls. Dozens. Hundreds. Bound. Labeled, sorted, but they're not poetry. Not philosophy. They're dreams. I started writing them down, Domitian explains, when I realized they'd never stop. You step closer and see the neat labels. Blue room owl, Kachina knife repeated, ceiling fire spiral, Titus at table without eyes. You exhale, slow. You really remember them all? No, he replies. Only the ones that woke me. He pulls one down and unrolls it on the central stone table. This one came after a senator's toast. Seemed innocent. Until that night. He traces a line in the scroll with his finger. He handed me a cup of wine, but when I drank it, it tasted like seawater. Then the walls turned to sails. I woke up in a cold sweat. What did you do? I exiled him. Said it was a matter of loyalty, which wasn't a lie. This room, more than any other, feels like a diagnosis, not of madness, but of overload. A man collecting evidence against his own subconscious, writing down every twist and whisper because the waking world was too slippery to trust alone. Historians still argue whether Domitian believed his own dream journals, whether they were merely therapeutic or whether he used them as political tools. But one thing is certain, they were meticulous. Page after page of imperial dream logic, the sleeping mind of an empire translated into Latin on tightly rolled papyrus. He picks up another scroll and holds it gently. This one, he says, was about my father. He was angry. Sighed I was trying. Too hard. Told me Rome didn't need gods. Just farmers and bridges. He smiles, but it fades quickly. Maybe he was right. But I wanted to be more. You look around at the room. The dreams. The candlelight. The shadows shaped like judgment. You already are, you say. He doesn't reply. Instead, he walks to a small wooden chest in the corner. Opens it. Inside, a handful of objects. A child's toy horse, carved from ivory. A signet ring with a faded gem. A broken stylus. And a lock of hair, bound in silk thread. He lets you look. I keep these, he says, to remind myself that I was once a boy who didn't know what power tasted like, or what suspicion did to the gut. You look down at the chest again, and does it help? No, he admits, but I'd be worse without it. He closes the chest slowly. The sound echoes against the stone. For a moment, neither of you speaks. Just the crackle of the brazier and the soft rustle of parchment. Then he turns, abruptly, and heads back out into the corridor. You follow, but this time his steps are slower. More measured. There's no speech. No grand philosophical musing. Just the sound of footsteps and breathing. And the stone beneath Dodd, you begin to sense that the tour is winding inward, not just through the palace, but through Domitian himself. Layer by layer. Loop by loop. You pass a window slit and see that the sun is fully up now. The city outside is awake. Rome breathes. Shouts rise in the marketplace. Hammers ring on anvils. Doves scatter above tiled rooftops. But here in the Emperor's shadowed heart, morning hasn't quite broken. You keep walking. Another. Turn. Another layer. Domitian, the sleepless emperor, walks with his ghosts. And you with yours. You're in a narrower corridor now. So narrow the torches hiss too close to the ceiling. It's as if the palace has curled inward upon itself, mimicking the slow spiral Domitian once traced in the carpet. Everything feels compressed. The Silence is not gentle here. It's tense, like the breath before a verdict. Domitian walks in front of you, shoulders slightly hunched now, hands clasped behind his back. You sense the weight settling in again. Not physical weight, but something far worse. The accumulation of nights, the backlog of sleep withheld, the stacked ledger of choices made long after dusk. He stops at a heavy wooden door carved with a familiar sigil his own. The stylized thunderbolt. Not Jupiter's, though it looks close. It's his version, sharper, angrier. "This is where I go," he says softly, "when I truly can't rest." The door creaks open. You're in a square room. Small. Empty, save for a stone chair in the center and torches set high on all four walls. No decorations. No windows. Just the sound of your breath and the faint buzz of flame. Domitian steps inside. The door closes behind him, and for a moment you're alone together in a cube of flickering amber silence. This was modeled after a punishment chamber, he says, settling into the chair. I made the builders remove all restraints. I didn't want suffering, just stillness. You walk the perimeter. The floor is cold. The air is thinner than you expect. Why here? He sighs. Because here, nothing speaks. Not statues. Not scrolls. Not memories. Just walls. He folds his hands in his lap. It's the only place that doesn't echo. You think of the echo chamber, of the astral corridor, of the nursery, the dreams, the night walks, the busts that judge in silence. All of it carefully designed, and yet all of it loud. But this room, it's different. It doesn't reflect back. It absorbs. You sit against the wall and listen. There's a long pause. Then, suddenly, I dreamed I was buried alive. You glance at him. I was emperor still, he continues. Even in the coffin, I could hear the Senate voting, could smell incense, but no one could hear me. He taps one finger against the stone chair, and I wasn't sure if I was supposed to fight ... or finally sleep. You look down at the floor. Historians still argue whether I feared death, he says. But it wasn't death. It was being awake forever. His voice is steady, but quieter now. Almost gentle. I sometimes think that if I could just collapse, just once, without anyone watching, I might sleep for 100 years. There's something childlike in the wish. Something fragile. He leans his head back against the cold stone. But I won't, he says, because they'll say I was weak, or dying, or poisoned, or already dead and replaced with a lookalike. You know how Romans are. You do. This is a city of rumors. It devours its rulers, one whisper at a time. He closes his eyes. Not in sleep, just in pause. I've written laws, he says. Built arches, fed provinces, raised temples, ordered executions. But none of it makes the night shorter. You nod, he continues, voice slower now. Some people dream to escape their lives. I live to escape my dreams. The brazier crackles. The torches flicker. You know, he says, I once considered outlawing sleep. You blink. Seriously. Making it illegal to rest more than 4 hours unless infirm or under 30. And why didn't you? You asked. He opens one eye, smirks. Even I knew the Senate would push back. And besides, I was afraid they'd actually like the idea. You chuckle softly. So does he. But the quiet returns fast. He stands. Let's walk, he says. If I sit too long, the shadows think I've given up. Back in the corridor, the walls feel warmer. The torches hum louder. Maybe it's your imagination, or maybe something has shifted. Maybe that room really does absorb things. You pass. A mirror small, circular, set into a pillar. Domitian catches his reflection. He stops. Stares. Double quote. Do I look tired? He asks. You don't answer, because yes, he does. But not in the way common men do. It's a deeper fatigue, a tiredness layered into the skin, into the breath. It's the kind of tired that makes time feel unreliable and identity start to smear. He brushes something from his tunic, adjusts the folds. Appearance is everything, he mutters. Even in the mirror? You ask Dot, he meets his own eyes again. Especially there. You walk together down a long straight hall now. The symmetry is oppressive, columns repeating perfectly, shadows landing exactly where they should. It's too precise. A hallway designed by someone trying to prove he could still control something. Domitian stops near a column with a carved eagle. Do you know what people forget? He asks. You wait. That I never wanted to be emperor. He traces the eagle's wing. They think I schemed. That I waited. That I maneuvered. But when my brother died, I wept. And then I waited for someone else to step forward. He turns to you. No one did. You say nothing. There's nothing to say. He sighs. I don't know how I got from there to here. From grieving brother to sleepless god. Another silence. Then, do you think I'll be assassinated? You flinch, but his tone is so flat, so unbothered, that it feels less like fear and more like weather forecasting. Someone always is, he adds. You think of the name scratched on the wall, the dream scrolls, the echo chamber. The masked Dot, he already knows. He just hasn't circled the date yet. Domitian glances toward the next hallway. Come, I want to show you one last place. You follow. But this time, you feel it in your bones. The palace is nearing its center dot, and so is he. Domitian leads you down a final corridor. This one feels different, quieter. Not because it's darker, or narrower, or muffled by heavy drapes, but because something's changing in the air. It's the silence of places rarely visited. Of places meant not for ruling, but for remembering. Dot at the end of the hall stands a pair of unassuming wooden doors. No crest, no guards. Just hinges worn smooth with time. He pauses. This is where I go when I need to remember that none of it lasts. He pushes the door open gently, and you both step inside. The room is round, dimly lit, and astonishingly plain. The walls are bare stone. No paint, no mosaics, no marble. In the center is a low marble slab, draped with white linen. On it rests a collection of small objects, a cracked wax seal, a faded sketch of a child's face, a ring with no gem, and an unlit oil lamp. This is my memorial, Domitian says, softly, to everyone I've forgotten. You don't speak. I started it years ago. He continues. When I realized I could no longer remember the name of my first tutor, the one who taught me how to shape a sentence. He gestures toward the sketch. My cousin Julia drew that. She was difficult, but bright. I had her exiled. I sometimes forget why. He touches the ring. That belonged to a friend. Or an enemy. I found it in a drawer and couldn't remember which. So I brought it here. There's no grandiosity in his voice. No ceremony. Just a simple, tired reverence. Historians still argue whether I ever loved anyone. He says, I still. On the slab. Some say I was too cold. Others say I was too afraid. He shrugs. Maybe I did. But love isn't what survives. Memory is. And memory, you sense, is fading for him, piece by piece, like fog lifting the outline of Rome from his grasp. He walks to the wall opposite the entrance, where a single torch burns. This is where I talk to them, he murmurs. The ones I've hurt, the ones who hurt me. He leans against the wall. I tell him everything, even things I don't believe. You stand beside him. The torch crackles. It casts soft golden light on his face, and for the first time, he looks how to say it aged. Not in the lines around his mouth or the wear in his posture, but in the gentleness of his silence. He sighs. I've spent years being watched, sculpted, painted, echoed. But this is the only place I've ever felt seen. You ask him why. Because there's no audience here, only witnesses. He falls quiet again. You sit. He remains standing, and for a long time, neither of you speaks. Because there's nothing left. To explain, he's built an empire out of marble and dread. He's written laws and burned names and haunted himself with dreams of mirrors and knives. He's looped through every corridor of his mind, over and over again, and still he doesn't sleep. He walks to the oil lamp on the marble slab, picks it up, lights it with a tinder spark. A soft glow fills the room. I light this, he says, not for the dead, but for the things I wanted to become. He sets it down. You realize then that the palace is no center, not really. It's not a circle, it's a spiral. Each chamber another orbit around an emperor who cannot rest. And now, you've reached the stillest part. The quiet eye of the storm. Domit. Ian closes his eyes. Just for a moment. The fire flickers. His shoulders rise and fall once. Slowly. Then he opens his eyes again. I'm going to keep walking now, he says. But you don't have to follow. You stand. Say nothing. Only nod. He turns, takes a deep breath, and slips out the door. Not like a god. Not like a tyrant. Just like a man who doesn't yet know if he's allowed to stop. You remain in the room, watching the lamp's flame dance low. And for once, you wonder if he'll sleep. Maybe not tonight, but soon. One day, maybe. The palace grows still now. Domitian has gone. His footsteps have faded into the stone, down corridors too deep and shadowed for you to follow. The torch by the memorial flickers lower, casting slow amber arcs on the cold walls. You sit for a while longer, letting the hush settle into your breath, your bones, your thoughts. There is no throne in this room, no decree to draft, no dream to fear, just stillness. And the memory of a man who tried so hard to master time that he forgot how to rest within it. Breathe in. The stone is cool against your back. The silence no longer presses, it cradles. Breathe out. The flicker of the lamp becomes your rhythm. No more echoes, no more masks. Just the soft glow of a moment stretched wide and calm. Somewhere far above, the city stirs. The forum awakens. Vendors call. Gates creak. Pigeons flap from rooftop to rooftop. But herein, in the quiet chamber, at the heart of a restless emperor's world, there is nothing left to chase. Only sleep, arriving not with fanfare or force, but with gentle persistence. Let your mind drift. Let the palace fade. Let your thoughts trail off, like a torch's final wisp of smoke. And as the empire turns beneath the stars, allow yourself to rest just for now. You've walked far. You've seen enough. Close your eyes. Sleep.